Hi, everyone. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. If this is not your first time, welcome back to the Come to Believe podcast. Today, we are talking to a special guest. Her name is Stephanie Ramos. She is an Arrupe class alum of the 2018 class. She's also an alum at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Yes.
And then you're currently a doctoral student for community psychology at UIC.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I got that right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. How's your day going?
It's going pretty well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for taking the time. And well, today's conversation is about we're talking about the importance of empowerment and celebrating women's achievement during this month of Women's History. So I'm very excited to hear your thoughts and for you to share about your experiences. Are you ready?
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. So why don't we just talk a little bit about your background and if you'd like to highlight any leadership roles within your academic and your professional career.
Yeah, so thank you again for having me here today. So just a little bit about me. So like you mentioned, my name is Stephanie Ramos. I'm 24 years old. I graduated from Arrupe College in 2018, and it feels surreal how much has happened within the past few years. I am a first generation student. My family here immigrated from Mexico, from central Mexico. I am the oldest in my family. So I have two brothers and a little sister. So being the oldest came with like a lot of responsibility, like growing up, kind of, being the third parent. I feel like as coming from an immigrant family, like the oldest tends to have that role, just having to be that third parent for the family. So aside from like, navigating college by myself, I also played like a big role at home still, since I was still living here. I feel like specifically, I feel like Arrupe really did help me like shape that academic success for me for where I am now, because when I went to high school, I went to a predominantly Black and Latino high school, and there wasn't a lot of like opportunity, or like there wasn't a lot of talk about like what the next steps were. Like, most people were going into the workforce, or they were going to like, their local community colleges. So I didn't really know how to like navigate like going into like higher education. I knew that that was something that I wanted to do, but like I just didn't really know what it took to get there. I'm really blessed to say I am really proud of myself for a lot of academic achievements that have accomplished within the past few years. I feel like a few of them would be just one, you know, graduating undergrad. Like that is such a huge milestone for me, to be able to say like as a first gen Latina that have a bachelor's degree. I know that like maybe like it's like 2-3% of Latina women are like in higher education. As you climb the ladder of like success, like now being in a PhD program, like it's even less Latinos in general. So I feel like that is a very achievement for me to be there, just representing like la cultura in general.
That is so amazing and inspiring to hear. And I think that's one of the beauties of the Arrupe College and how it has been able to just bring so many diverse people and such unique, talented individuals into one place and see them succeed. So thank you so much for being so open about that. And I'm sure your family is super proud of everything you've accomplished and everything else that you'll get to accomplish in the future. Congrats.
Thank you.
So the next question that I have, can you tell us about your current academic pursuits and what drew you to pursue that type of degree in particular?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I am pursuing psychology. So I started looking into psychology when I was in high school. I was in AP Psych. So, when you're in AP Psych, you learn about like what you think about what psychology is. We think like therapy. We're thinking about like the founders of psychology, which is like the newest science. Um, so like I didn't really know much about psychology. Like I just knew like this is something that I was attracted to. I really like being in a field that was helping you like help other people. And then at that time when I was in high school, I was going through like a lot of like personal things at home, like with my mom and specifically. So like just seeing her go through like, you know, some personal things made me realize like I wanted to advocate for like mental health a lot. As I went into undergrad, when I started at Arrupe, like I wanted to pursue like clinical psychology. So like I mentioned, therapy, counseling, what we think about what psychology is. But then when I went to U of I to finish off my bachelor's degree, I started learning about like different branches of psychology. We got to look at psychology like a tree because psychology has a lot of branches. There's a lot of concentrations that go into psychology. We have, you know, clinical, we have cognitive, we have neuro, community psych, social, like there's so many, you know, different branches of psychology and they all offer different things. So I started doing research at U of I. And for me, I didn't know much about research at this point, like I mentioned. So pretty much I thought research was about, you know, what we think about working in a lab, you know, kind of like what chemistry is like working in a lab with different, you know, chemicals. And I was like, well, that's not intriguing to me. So I started working with this grad student at U of I and her work focused on like the experiences of first generation Mexican American college students. And like I never knew like that's what research could be too. Like I didn't know much about like qualitative research. So which qualitative research means is like interviews, like you know, like you're measuring like interviews instead of like measuring like numbers or what we think about when we're like measuring like data. So it's a little different. So I was so interested in like just about us like Latinas and Latinos, about like higher education and like all these things. I was just like, wow, like this is so like interesting. So because of that experience and that exposure I had, and that graduate student was also Latina herself, it made me realize like I could do this too, because you know, never in my whole life have I seen someone be like in her position to be a graduate student, that someone that's going to be like, in my eyes at the time, like someone really important one day, maybe a professor, and like that representation like really mattered to me. So because of that little seed I planted at U of I, that's what like kept me being motivated for my current like goals now, like that got me into the PhD program.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing that you had that chance, that experience to meet someone that, you know, was able to teach you this new type of, I guess, work that can be done. And even more impactful is the fact that this person represented, you know, where you come from, the Latino experience, the Latina experience. So it touches on a very important subject and a very important topic, which is representation and how important it is for Latinas to be able to achieve their goals and reach, you know, all of those milestones. So I'm really happy for you that you got to experience that and that you're now, you know, completing your PhD. Congrats.
Thank
So
you,
that,
Chris.
of course, the next question that I have, what do you hope to do after you finish your graduate program? What is something you hope to achieve professionally in the future?
That is such a big question because that you know, I say it's a big question because you know, a lot of us that are like in academia, no matter where you are, whether that's, you know, completing your associates or your bachelor's or etc., it's always that question that is always commonly asked, like, what are you doing like after you graduate? And I just want to kind of like this, like, there's this stigma around like, if you don't know that that's a bad thing, like you're not accomplishing things, because you are accomplishing things because you're in that program working hard. Like it's always like, what's next, what's next? And I say that because now that I'm in this graduate program, because my program is lengthy, it's 5 years long. And you know, I think my 18-year-old self would have been like, shouldn't you know what you want to do like with your degree? And, you know, I feel like I say this confidently, like it's okay not to know. because I feel like as you go through life and you have more experiences, as you like work, like as I work more in my research, I feel like I will start being able to navigate and identify like what is it that I want to do after pursuing this degree and making all the connections that I'm making. Um, as a community psychologist, there's different paths that I think about. You know, the one that's common is like staying in academia, being a professor, running my own lab one day. But there's also other things that I think about, like working in the industry, which pretty much looks like working for like a nonprofit, an organization, a company, like running like data for them. So like running numbers. Which could also be very impactful. For example, if you're working for like a community in the south side of Chicago and you want to know like what's going to help like with mental health disparities, like you're like the data analysis person that's going to help them like, okay, this is what we could do better to help this community, essentially. I feel like my overall goal, though, like what I really want to accomplish is to be able to give back to my people. That's what matters most to me. And I feel like that is so, I feel like there's power in saying that, because anytime like I see another Latinx individual that's pursuing like higher education or pursuing to be better themselves, I am very inspired by them. And it's like I'm rooting for them regardless of how well I know them or don't know them, because I feel like this degree really is for my community, because I'm willing to give back everything, you know.
That's really powerful to hear, because it takes a lot, especially when it comes to working with people and really trying to understand where they come from and the issues and the struggles that they have to face. It can take a toll on a person. And I didn't study psychology, but I have a lot of friends who are in this industry, so they've told me that it does come with a lot of, hardships, and having to, deal with a lot of internal issues to be able to serve the community.
Right.
So the fact that you want to do all this research and really pay it forward for your community, it's truly admirable. And I'm excited to see you, getting back and, finding that position that allows you to provide those services for your community. Or even if you become a professor, who knows? I'm sure that'd be amazing too. It seems that you're very passionate about the topic, and I'm sure that any student would really learn a lot from your experiences.
Thank you.
So the next question, what role did Arrupe play in preparing you for your current program of study?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to say there. I just want to say Arrupe has impacted me so much that my master's proposal is going to be about Arrupe. So that just that just kind of in the sense, and this goes to show how impactful it was. Just to impact it a little bit, Arrupe really did change my perception of myself as a student. And I say that because from K through 12, I went believing that I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't capable enough to achieve, like a degree outside of like, like your high school diploma. Like I just thought I wasn't good enough or qualified enough. And this just came because, unfortunately attending, a Black and Latino school, like I feel like our education wasn't the best, that could have been offered. Or, I always compared myself to other students, thinking about students that went to better high schools and how they were learning so much. And I felt so behind. So me saying that Arrupe really prepared me to go on for like my 4-year degree and like on forward now. This was achieved because I had a great support system at Arrupe. The students, the faculty members, there was so much help all the time. Like it was just a lot of community. I think Arrupe is very special because there's only like 200 of us, like 250, 300 at max, attending this school. And I feel like that was like very impactful, that we had so much attention from like, like faculty members, that were able to give us that one-on-one. They actually cared about our learning. there was someone put in place to help us, get into like a 4-year degree as well. Like I would go into her office. Her name was Julie Garcia. And, it was because of her that she believed in me. She really planted that seed inside of me and said like, hey, I think you're more than qualified to go on to like U of I, which is like, high rank. Or she even thought about like going to Georgetown or things like that. But because she planted that idea in my head that I was able to like be able to achieve that, that's what got me to where I am now, and it opened up many, many doors essentially. So Arrupe really did play a big role in who I am today and in my academics.
That's amazing. And it sort of connects with the work that you're in the, your academic career that you're on right now, which is the whole idea of community, right? It seems like Arrupe really brings that home for you. And it provided that. It provided a community, it provided a space. And I relate to that. I graduated from Arrupe in 2019. 2019? Yeah, 2019. So uh, I relate to how committed the people at Arrupe
Mhm.
are to being there for every single student. And it's just so exciting to hear that you share that experience. So the next question, as a woman leader, what does representation mean to you? What impact can it have on others, particularly young people?
Yeah, that's an also a really great question. And I know that I touched a little bit on like representation, and I feel like coming from a Latina woman, representation has got me where I am today. Like I mentioned, how that graduate student that I was working with, how she was also Latina and how that inspired me. If I got to this point in my life, it was because of great women. It started like, with my mom, her, helping me believe in my dreams, telling me like that I can achieve everything that I want. And she really inspired me. I was really inspired by my mom because, as she immigrated here to the US, to me, that inspired me in itself. That is a big journey to even be here to give me like a greater opportunity. And then going into college, I met, all my mentors. I was fortunate enough that all of them were Latina women. And I told each one of them, I was like, if it wasn't for you, I really don't know if I would have believed in myself enough to like apply to grad school, to believe in myself for those internships. Like representation matters so, so much. And for younger kids, specifically younger girls, I just really want, like, if I was speaking to my like 10-year-old self right now, I would just tell her, like, you are more than capable to like achieve like any of your dreams, no matter what anyone tells us. I feel like as women, we do have to go through a lot of things, and we're told no, or that we can't do certain things because of our gender, but it's all possible to do.
That's that's really, really inspiring. And I mean, I'm sure you've already inspired so many people. Just by listening, I feel motivated to continue pushing for my own goals because, like you said, it takes a lot. And I'm sure, like what you mentioned about your mom, it took a lot to, leave her country, leave her family and her traditions to come here to a completely different country and want to provide a great life for you and your family. So it is truly inspiring to see that that is reflected in you and your commitment to other people and to the things that you want to achieve in your life. So uh, thank you for sharing that with all of us. And you can already touch that on this. You talked about your mom, but I don't know if you would like to mention anyone else or talk a bit more about your mom, or someone that has influenced or shaped you into the leader that you are today, if you'd like to share anything else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I would say it's definitely like both my parents that have really like influenced me. And I've said this before, like in the past, where I'm sure others that come from immigrant parents could like resonate with this. But I feel like when I growing up, my parents always felt like they weren't giving me enough. And what I mean by that is that like this country has always made them feel less than because they didn't have a degree, or because there was a language barrier, or because like they weren't at a like making enough money or things like that. I feel like they were always put down, mocked, or like to lower their self-esteem, and they always felt like, what can I offer you? Essentially, they always made themselves less than, like belittled themselves, saying like, I wish I could give you more. And I tell them now that I'm like, you gave me more than enough. You gave me the tools to navigate to who I am right now. Like that really is what has inspired me from my parents. Like they motivate me that like, because of you, I am a hard worker. I'm like, you are a hard worker with your hands, because I see that like, my dad working, like putting down tracks in the railroad, and he's working hard labor. And I'm just like, you have taught me how to work hard too. It's in a different capacity, but you have taught me that. My mom has taught me to be resilient throughout my life, to like you mentioned, like leaving your whole family to be thousands of miles away is such, like, I can't imagine doing that. I can't imagine doing that. So all those things really have like shaped and influenced me for the woman I am today.
Well, that is really beautiful, and I definitely resonate with that. My mom is also an immigrant. She was an immigrant, um, and she also shaped so many of my life experiences and the views that I have on life and the way that I, hold myself. So, thank you for sharing your experiences, and I would love to meet your family. They sound like really so thank you for sharing that. So the next question. What barriers do you believe still exist for those who identify as women in order to advance as leaders within higher education? What barriers do you think are there?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there is barriers. If I'm talking about like me being in psychology, even though it is known to be like a predominantly women field, I truly still feel like we are looked at less than like men, in particular like white men. Like they're always looked like the smarter ones, have like more authority. So I definitely still see that in the field where we're not capable enough, quote unquote, capable enough to, play these like more bigger roles, like be a professor, or I don't know, like it's just so many different things that I do see play a role in like higher education. That is a barrier, or something that I know many of us know, like, statistically showing like women are still being paid less than like men. So these are still like barriers that like are being dealt with. Essentially, I know that a lot of my colleagues, they're women and they're like TAs, and like they talk about sometimes how like students don't take them like almost as serious compared to like there's literally one in my cohort, there's one male, and like his experiences are like so much more different than like what we talk about, and it kind of just says a lot like based off that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there are still these inequities that hold women back, and it's mainly because of the patriarchal ideologies that are still in place within the higher ed world, within psychology, and just so many industries.
Yeah.
Um, but I am very optimistic about the future that will have women like yourself and like other people that we've met that at Arrupe, um, who are, working towards being those representatives and really making these changes. And I'm really excited to be part of that change as well in any way that I can. So the next question that I have, and we're almost there. Um, what role does higher education play in the process of empowering those that are women?
Yeah, so I feel like when I think about that question, there's a few things that come to mind. Like I think about First, I just want to say, like, I want women to feel empowered regardless if they play or like if they're in higher education, because there's this stigma, and I feel like it's going away slowly now in our generation, that like if someone doesn't have like higher education, that they're like not qualified, or they're not smart enough, or they can't have like a good job. So I just want to like, that's the first thing that came to my head. But for me to be like in higher ed is empowering, and I think it plays a role with like the different identities I hold: the identity of being a first gen, the identity of being a woman, and the identity of being a Latina. So this plays a huge role, because I think to myself, like I had mentioned before, like about statistically showing like only like 3% of Latina women are in higher education, and again, I mentioned, like, as you climb the academic ladder, like there's less of us, there's way less of us, and it's like it speaks volumes when we're in a room, like when I'm in a conference that's literally filled with majority of white people, and here I am, a Latina, that's families, from like central Mexico, like what is she doing here type of thing, like, like I feel like there is empowerment in that, essentially, like even though there's only few of us there, we really are representing and empowering many women around us. When I have mentees now, like even though I might not know it, or it's not like directed at me, I know that there's empowerment in seeing someone, that looks like you, and be like, oh, look, like it is completely possible to do what you're doing, and like capable. Or even seeing a woman like play the roles that like I'm doing now, and it's just like I feel like that kind of speaks a lot as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it goes to show that just bringing in yourself, your authentic self, your identities, you being a Latina, you being a woman, and you being a first generation PH student, I think that bringing those unique perspectives into these majority white spaces, it's very impactful. And I'm sure that your contributions to your industry are going to be, very positive in the future, especially when it comes to encouraging more people that look like you, that look like us, to want to strive for more. So I'm really excited to see that happen in the next coming years, that more and more people are feeling confident and that they have the resources to achieve these goals like you have. So we'll skip the next question because you essentially have answered that, and I don't want to keep you for hours here. But the next question: what can be done to ensure that women are invested in, are fairly compensated, and have opportunities to lead? I know this is a loaded one, but any ideas that you have?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. And it's a great question to ask. Like, I feel like one thing that comes to mind is to ask those that are more in power, like for example, to like speak up for women as well, like to advocate for us, like not only women advocating, that's great, but like other people helping us as well, and again advocating for us of why we deserve the same rights. Like if I'm comparing it to gender, like men, like advocating for, wherever you work, your colleagues, your friends or your partners or whatever. I feel like that could be a way, to compensate and have like more opportunities. I wish I could think of like other things. Like it's a big question, but it's like what can be done to do something like this, to like fairly compensate. Like I feel like there's a lot to think about with that one.
I completely agree with you. And when creating these questions, I was like, I'm not expecting anybody to really know the answer because it's really difficult. Even I completely would struggle with that question myself. But I love that point that you made, holding those people in power up to higher standards. Like the US is a very strong country. It has so many abilities to make things happen. So holding the people up at the top, no matter the industry, holding them accountable and speaking up, I think it's a great way to get things to happen, to get things to be better.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good point you made. Essentially about like, thinking about like the people that have more authority over it, like, maybe like more regulations or more checkups, like for example, like how I mentioned like pay, like there being more regulations towards that. So there could be like equal fair pay as well.
Definitely. So, the very last question that we have for you, what is one achievement out of the many that you have that you are most proud of?
I feel like the most achievement that I'm most proud of, like currently, as this is my first year in my doctorate program, I think that has been one of my greatest achievements. Um, because I just really still didn't think it was going to be possible to be in this position. For those that don't know, like getting into graduate school, especially a doctorate program, is extremely difficult. I'm talking like they accept 5 students out of like 300 applicants they have. So it's extremely competitive. And to be able to be where I am right now, I hold a lot of like, I'm really proud of that. And I hold that. And I feel like it has been really hard, really, really hard. But it's something that I keep in mind and tell myself, like, not just anyone gets to this point. So I'm just really grateful for that achievement that I've had.
Congrats. I did not know that, and that's crazy. And it just goes to show how talented you are and how much you'll contribute to your industry. Uh, and just to everyone that you get to speak with and the people that get to know you. So that was it with the questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and with our audience. Uh, we'll obviously share everything with you. And yeah, I mean, anything else you'd like to add before we head out?
Um, I'll just say like I just want to say like for those like that are, also first gen and feel like you've had no for an answer, you feel like you can't do it. Like just know that you can't do it. And as long as you have one person to believe in you, like that's enough. Like go for it. No matter what it is. It doesn't have to be like higher education, or if it's something you really want to do, start a business, go into anything, like just know that you are more than capable and smart enough and hardworking enough to do it, even if other people have said no, that you can.
I completely agree. And again, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening.